Hi, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We had some technical issues, but I hope everybody can start joining now. Please feel free to write in the chat if you have any technical issues or any questions for us. Just wait a few seconds while the rest of the people join in the event. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. My name is Michelle Diaz. I'm the Education Program Manager at Trees Atlanta. Thank you for joining us today. This is our Ask the Arborist. This event happens every other month, and the theme for today is fruit tree care. Our mission at Trees Atlanta is to protect and improve Atlanta's urban forests by planting, conserving, and educating. This is one of our many educational programs. We host education programs year-round, so we hope that you can join us for more programs. Check out our website at treesatlanta.org/calendar for more information. And our arborists today are Mike McCord. He's the founder of Community Foodscape. Thank you, Mike, for joining us today. And Susan Pierce-Cunningham, she's the Associate Director of Volunteer Services at Trees Atlanta. And you can send us questions through the Q&A and through the chat, and I'll be reading them and sharing them with the arborist. We're very excited. We have many questions today. And after this event, you're going to be receiving a survey email. We would like to get your feedback on the program, learn about what the topics that you might be interested in us to cover in this type of events or more classes. So please share with us your feedback. And to learn more about what's coming up for Trees Atlanta, visit our website, treesatlanta.org, and follow us on social media. All right, well, Mike and Susan, thank you for joining us today.
Michelle.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So let's go ahead and get started with the question. And any introduction you can give to this topic, any points that you want to share with us.
Would you like to go first, Mike?
Yeah. So I worked at Trees Atlanta for over 5 years. Became an arborist through working there and served as a project coordinator in the Neighborhoods program, and then went on to help install and maintain the urban food forest at Browns Mill, which is a 7-acre urban agriculture park in Southeast Atlanta. And the focus of that park was really on growing food in a communal setting. So, I was able to apply a lot of the knowledge and skills gained working as an arborist and applied them to a food growing system. And I did that for a couple of years and then started a business called Community Foodscapes, where we help people grow food at home. So I started that business in 2015, and that is my full-time job now. We do lots of fruit tree installations. So I received a lot of the questions that you all sent in before this session. So I did a little research to give you all some answers to those. But yeah, looking forward to bringing some more questions.
And I wanted to mention the food forest again. If anyone's interested in visiting, you're welcome to. It's open to the public during daylight hours. They also have volunteer opportunities, and I'm going to drop the link here in the chat so that you guys can read more about it if you'd like. It's the City of Atlanta's Aglanta site. Trees Atlanta's role now is mostly just with forest restoration there, but there are other volunteer opportunities through Aglanta to actually help in the orchard and in the other food production areas that aren't the direct forests. So please check it out. And then I'm here today mostly because my expertise is in tree care. I really am passionate about pruning young trees because we do that a lot at Trees Atlanta. So though I don't have the direct fruit tree experience, I can help with general tree care questions.
That's perfect. Yeah. So let's go ahead and read the first question. My dwarf Mayer lemon is planted in a very large planter with very good quality soil and citrus supplements as needed on my veranda, and with 4 hours sunlight currently, 6+ in other months. It has always produced a great amount of fruit, over 2 yields a year. However, this year the blossoms were destroyed by heavy rain and no fruit. What can I do to help ensure fruits again and protect in the future? Note, there's new growth, the new growth continue, but it looks sparse.
Awesome. I have a question for you, Michelle. Are participants only able to type in questions and answers, or are they able to speak as well?
Yes, they can raise their hand or just type in the chat if they are interested in reading the question. And actually, if any of the participants here send this question and would like to elaborate a little bit more, feel free to raise your hand or type a note to me in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah, so just this seems like a very specific issue, but just more generally, lemon trees and other citrus trees can't be planted in Atlanta, like outside. You usually have to keep them in a container and move them in and out with the frost, because although the frost might not kill the plant, it will damage the leaves, and it will kill off any flowers or flower buds which would form fruit. So if you want your lemon or your citrus to actually produce for you, you're gonna have to bring that in before the frost and keep it in a sunny spot in your house, ideally in front of a window, and then bring it back out after the end of the frost season. So usually taking it in October, November, and putting it back out in April, May. For this specific question about heavy rain and no fruit, I would say that one of the biggest causes of not getting fruit is having an issue with the flowering. So this question says that the flowers were destroyed by heavy rain. So there's a couple of things that could happen there. Heavy rain and wind could actually knock flowers off. Also, a late frost could come in and damage those flowers before they had time to set fruit. So there's a couple of different environmental issues that could be at play here.
So having, if you have it in a big pot, having it on wheels is super helpful, right? Yeah.
Yeah, or having like a dolly or a hand cart.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I personally have I have orange, lemon, lime, kumquat, all in pots on like my back deck, but they live inside right now with me for the winter time. And sometimes those temperature fluctuations of coming in and out can be confusing for the plant, and it might trigger them to actually bloom. So sometimes like I'll have middle of winter like orange blooms in the house, which is kind of weird. And then they can't get pollinated because I don't have a lot of insects in my house. So I end up having to like Q-tip pollinate from like flower to flower to spread the pollen manually. But yeah, that's just kind of one of the challenges of living in Atlanta and trying to grow tropical plants.
Yeah. Are there any follow-up questions to that? If not, I'll go on and read the next one. Okay. The next one's about banana trees, Mike. So this person said, I planted 2 healthy trees from our local nursery 1.5 years ago. added very good quality soil and fertilizer. They also said they're in coastal zone 8A, 8B. They continue to grow and are approximately 6 feet tall. However, I don't know how to best care for them, as I would really like to harvest bananas, and the red blooms are an amazing sight. Please help. So it sounds like they might be far enough south to actually keep their bananas alive all year round, which I don't have any experience with because they die back here every year. Do you have any advice for them, Mike?
Yeah, so yeah, I have bananas in pots and also planted in the ground at my house. It sounds like if your banana's a year and a half old and it's about 6 feet tall, it might be a dwarf variety that was because like each one kind of has their own variety names, and a lot of times they're clones of whatever the mother tree was. Bananas are not real trees, they're actually grasses, and one of the major ways they propagate is there will be like a mother tree and then she'll send out baby pups at the base. So you take those pups and you dig them up and replant them. So it sounds like maybe a pup was purchased a year and a half ago and it was planted. Like you said, Susan, it sounds like maybe the frost hasn't killed it back all the way. So that tree might just need more time to actually mature enough to form the blooms and then the fruit. But yeah, generally you need to have like 10 months of frost-free weather in order to actually get fruit off a banana. And different varieties will mature faster than others. But yeah, it's kind of hard to tell without knowing the exact variety. In terms of getting it to maybe bloom more, I would look at some organic fertilizers that contain phosphorus. And this is going to be true for pretty much any fruit tree, is you need them to flower first before they can actually produce the fruit. And phosphorus is a known nutrient to help produce those flowers.
Oh, that's cool.
And we have a question in the chat, Susan.
Yeah, I saw that.
Maybe it'd be relevant too. So talking about the zones 8A, 8A, is it possible to have a citrus orchard in that zone? Specifically in Greensboro, Georgia.
I think you're still gonna have to do what Mike said.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be really hard to have an orchard in zone 8 that is focused on citrus. Now, if you go far enough south, then in Georgia you can get to like, a zone 9, and then you'll have better success. Yeah, it's just going to be tough. The only way that I've heard that you can have like citrus outside in like a zone 8 setting is you have to have like a misting system set up. And on the nights that it's going to get below freezing, you're supposed to like mist the orchard pretty much all night long, because it takes energy for the water molecules to freeze. Takes a lot of energy from like at 32 to go from liquid to solid for the water molecules. So it's a way of like protecting the water in the cells of the plant by continually misting the field. So yeah, if you're interested in experimenting, I would definitely check out citrus misting and get some ideas from that.
Very interesting. So there's following up on that. Are there some good alternatives for fruit trees in that specific zone?
What are some fruit trees that you've seen growing in Atlanta, Susan?
Well, in my yard, I have a fig, So that's one of my favorites. We also plant a good bit of persimmons, both the native and the Japanese cultivars, because they handle the cold weather really well. And you plant a lot of apples and pears, right? Yeah, those pome fruits like that tend to do really well here as well. Do you have any favorite varieties or cultivars of apples or pears?
So I really like Asian pears, which don't have that typical like pear shape, but they're more of like a sphere. And what's really nice about Asian pears is they tend to be, and this is an Asian pear versus what is typically planted as a European pear. We don't really have like native edible pears here, but the Asian pear, it tends to be more like disease and pest resistant, and it's also self-pollinating. So if you have a smaller space and you can only have one fruit tree, like an Asian pear would be a good choice. Now, if you're trying to grow a whole orchard, I think it's a good idea to plant lots of different types of fruit trees and different varieties within each species, so that if you do have, a pest or disease issue with one, you don't have your entire like orchard wiped out.
There are a couple more that I'm hoping you'll talk about, Mike, because nobody asked questions about them, but I just want them to get mentioned, which are our American plums and the pomegranate. So I was wondering, I know you plant both of them. Do you have favorite ways to plant them or any favorite varieties?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big old long list of stuff that'll grow in Georgia that people don't really know about. So yeah, we do have native plums, native persimmon. We also have pawpaw, which is the fruit the fruit tree that is native to our region that has like the biggest fruit that's native here, and it's like kind of like a big banana. So those are really cool. Definitely check them out. It's PAW. Another native like fruiting tree is serviceberry, and Trees Atlanta has planted thousands and thousands of those as street trees, and they're pretty much like a giant blueberry tree. Now the fruit isn't as sweet as a blueberry, but you can still harvest them and make smoothies or eat them fresh, put them into pancakes. So I think that's a really
Cobbler's my favorite.
Ooh. Awesome.
Yeah, we just planted pawpaws on Saturday in Adair Park. Neighborwoods is planting more of those now, which is great.
More serviceberry?
More pawpaws.
Pawpaws, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As street trees or in parks?
No, it's in a park.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, next question. So it sounds like this person planted, it says Hall avocado, but I'm kind of wondering if that's Haas, if it was supposed to be Haas, I'm not sure. But so they mentioned that avocados are self-pollinated. Their avocado is coming up on 3 years this April at their coastal home, which I think is key to mention because growing avocados here in Atlanta would be tricky outdoors. So their coastal home has sandy soil. It's survived hard rains, frost, and it's doing well. It's 4 feet tall. They're giving all this information because they're curious about what they can do to also help it. They also planted it in great quality soil, gave it avocado fertilizer, but they want to know what else can they do to ensure fruit production, like just to make sure that the tree is going to actually make fruit. They also said it has deer-proof fencing and it has full sun. Wow, it sounds like this avocado tree has it pretty good.
Yeah. And I did just look up, and there is a Hall variety.
Oh, there is. Okay, it is Hall. Okay, cool. I think I read somewhere that they're self-pollinating, but if you have more, you have greater chance of getting more fruit. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, and that's pretty much true for like any fruit or berry plant. If you have different varieties, you'll get more fruit off of each plant, and sometimes the fruit will actually be larger as well. So if you have space for a second avocado tree, I would definitely look at which varieties will pollinate Hall and vice versa. And yes, that would definitely be helpful. And then on that same line of thinking, you need pollinator like insects to pollinate your plants. So, planting perennial native flowers near your fruit trees, they don't have to be right underneath them, but in the same area. That way you're kind of pulling in bees and butterflies and all those pretty friends into the area where the fruit trees are, and then they'll more easily pollinate your tree. And then the last thing, I see you've already got avocado fertilizer, but yeah, just making sure that you're not using too much nitrogen, because a lot of times people put a lot of nitrogen fertilizer on their fruit trees because they want it to grow bigger and faster, which is okay, but it kind of tells your fruit tree, okay, I'm going to put a lot of my energy into growing my body, but it doesn't put a lot of energy into their flowers. So when it's time for the tree to actually flower and fruit, you want to switch to more of a phosphorus heavy fertilizer and have less nitrogen. And that's pretty much across the board for any fruiting tree.
Do we have any follow-up questions, Michelle, before we go on to the next topic?
Yeah, there's a question about, we were talking about the native fruit trees, and the person is asking where we can find a list. Yeah. And I know that the fruit tree sale is coming up soon. Those are specific to the Atlanta area. They have a list in there of trees that grow here. But Mike, if you have any other list about potential in other locations as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna post 4 links into the chat. And these are 4 places where you can buy fruit trees that will grow well here. The first is the fruit tree sale that Michelle mentioned. The other 2 are local nurseries. I guess the other 3 are local nurseries. Ison's, Willis, and we also have a small fruit tree nursery on Memorial Drive. That's the COFO Community Foodscapes nursery. So I'm going to put all 4 of those links in the chat, and you can get a good sense of what's possible to grow in this region.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I'm going to read out the next question while you put those links in the chat.
Right.
So this person's interested in establishing some fruit trees in an area that is experiencing soil erosion problems. It's in full sun. What would be the best steps to get new saplings started off well? It's an open area with a gradual slope. And they're also curious about which fruit tree species would be best. We've talked a little bit about what grows well here, but if there's anything in particular that likes well-drained soil, maybe could mention it. Well, Mike, did you finish with the links? If not, I can start the answer.
Yeah, could you just maybe talk about planting
Erosion.
on a slope in general, maybe?
Yeah, if the soil is washing away, there's probably a lot of water moving down that slope. So it would be good to help slow down the water so that you're not only losing your soil, but you're keeping more moisture there for your plants before you plant. So the easiest and cheapest way to help prevent soil erosion is to leave the mulch layer on your hill, which you may already be doing. You can always add more too, if needed. And then sometimes even the mulch or the leaf litter will wash down if it really is like heavy water flow. So you may need to help slow down the water by adding something like coconut fiber wattles. Wattles, I think that's W-A-T-T-L-E-S. Hopefully I got that right. Or doing some slight soil moving, like terracing a little bit to help slow down the water movement as well. But then really it's very important to keep that organic layer on top of your soil. So that mulch or leaf litter, whatever it is you're using, will help slow down the water as it's falling from the sky. And it will prevent you from losing a lot of that soil. Any other tips, Mike, on soil erosion?
No, I think you covered most of it. The only thing I didn't really hear was about the planting of the tree itself and forming a berm. So
Yeah.
we do at Trees Atlanta at pretty much every planting is whenever you dig a hole, you end up with a little extra soil at the end. So we use that soil to form a berm, which is a small earthen barrier a foot or so out from the tree trunk, and it allows you to catch the water that is falling from the clouds and get it to the roots of the tree without it washing down the slope. So that's something that could be helpful. In terms of what fruit species would be best, most fruit trees want to have well-draining soil. So putting them on some sort of a hill or slope is going to be better for the tree than planting it at the bottom of the slope, because fruit trees are pretty sensitive to wet roots and they don't want to be sitting in like a puddle. They'll have different fungal issues, root rot. So yeah, I think you can plant most things on a slope.
And then somebody asked a follow-up question about, does soil need to be treated? Should soil be treated at the new site? I'm not sure what you mean by treating, but the best thing you can do for soil health is to keep that organic layer. I consider that treating the soil. If it's native soil, it's probably going to be fine. If it's like gravel or all rock, then it may not be the best place for planting fruit trees. I don't know, Mike, have you ever planted in gravel or rock?
I don't think I've planted. Well, maybe I have, but yeah, we did amend with some compost. I think what's important here is I feel like there's a lot of maybe like lingering sentiment that whenever you plant something, you're supposed to like put fertilizer in the hole or put compost in the hole. And something that we teach at the volunteer days, if you ever come out and plant trees with Trees Atlanta, you'll learn that we don't really want to put like compost or anything into the hole itself, because what you've kind of created, at least in Atlanta, is we got a lot of red clay, and you kind of create a little like bathtub in there if you fill it with something that's really loose and not dense, like a compost. And water moves in a couple different directions, but one way is it moves like horizontally through the soil profile. So your tree will get too much water if you're just putting like a compost into that hole and not the rest of the area. Another reason why we tend to not put compost in the planting hole is we want our tree roots to go and explore. We don't want to give them all the good stuff in their hole, because then they're going to keep the roots real tight near them. And then when it comes time for them to grow larger, they can get pot bound or root bound, or the roots will actually like encircle on themselves and kind of choke themselves. So we want our tree roots to kind of spread out. So you generally don't want to put compost like in the hole itself. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Susan?
I'm just so glad that you mentioned the soil texture. It really matters. The soil texture is what helps water move through and what controls the movement of water through the soil. And if the texture of the soil suddenly changes as water is moving through it, it's going to change the way it moves. So it might slow down or speed up or not be able to just move through the soil as it was. So we try to keep the texture even and the same as what's around it. Yeah. like to reiterate that because we get that question a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
And I will just add that we kind of want to decompact the clay in the area where we're planting. And that's partially so the roots have an easier time traveling, but also so that our hole will drain a little bit. So we do this thing called scoring the interior of the hole before we plant the tree, which kind of allows for water to percolate through a little easier and also gives little channels for roots to kind of get into the soil. But yeah, you can learn all of that by coming to one of our plantings, and then you can apply those principles at your home.
Yeah, so true. Every single time somebody comes to volunteer at a tree planting for the first time, they always say they learn so much. So come join us. You'll learn a lot.
That's great. There's a question in the chat also. So when transplanting a grafted fruit tree or a fruit tree from a nursery, when is the best time of the year in the zone 8A in Greensboro, Georgia?
Yeah, it's the same as here. We like to transplant in the cooler months, especially for deciduous trees when they're not growing as much. It's just easier on the trees to move them in the cooler months. So we recommend here in Atlanta, which is pretty similar to Greensboro. I think we're 8B, maybe split here in the city, 8A. I can't remember. Sorry.
Yeah, we're 7B, 8A here.
Oh, okay, 7B. That's what I meant. Thank you. But yeah, October through March is when we try to complete the majority of our tree planting because it's just less stressful for trees at that point. Did that answer the question? Okay.
So
All right, cool. Okay, so the next one we have that was sent before today was, which fruit trees espalier well? Can I do this along a fence that is on the south side of my yard? What time of year should I measure hours of sun in a specific spot? Any general advice on combining beauty with fruit trees in a landscape? That's a lot of questions at once. Let's start with espalier. So Mike, you can explain what espalier is and talk about, like, do you need to be measuring the amount of sun in general when you're planting fruit trees? And does that apply specifically to when you espalier something as well?
Yeah, so maybe we'll talk about the hours of sunlight first.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so for the most part, the more sun, the better. The faster your tree will grow, the more fruit you'll get. In terms of a minimum number of hours, like a bare minimum, I would say 4 hours of direct sunlight, but 6 to 8 hours, it would be better. Think of it like a vegetable garden. Where would you plant your veggies in the yard? That sunny spot is also going to be good for your fruit trees. And one reason for that, just some of like the biology of it, is a lot of the fruits a lot of the vegetables that we eat are actually fruits. Tomato, pepper, eggplant, all of these are forming a flower, and then they're forming a fruit, and we eat that fruit, but we usually call it a vegetable. Same thing with a fruit tree. They're forming a flower, forming a fruit. So the more sun, the more flowers you'll get, the more fruit you'll be produced. Now, in terms of espalier, it's a fancy French term for growing a tree horizontal. So you can use this technique to grow trees like along a wall. You can use it to form a fence. Yeah, there's kind of a lot of different ways you can do it. It's good if you have a small amount of space, or if you just have like a really narrow space to grow in, or if you just want to have like a living fence, which I think is pretty cool. In terms of the type of fruit tree, I've had the most success with pomegranate and fig. You can do like apple, pear, and plum, but they seem to be a little bit slower growing, like not as vigorous once you cut them back. So yeah, I would try using a pomegranate or a fig to start, just like to practice maybe, and then once you kind of get the hang of it, you could, you know, try out some different species.
Yeah, and you said you've done it with pear too, right?
Yeah, I've done it with
Yeah.
pear. Yeah.
That seems like a good option too, like pear and apple.
Yeah, it is a multi-year process, so you just kind of have to be aware of that. And the general timeline is you plant the tree and you actually cut it back. So if you buy like a 2 or 3 foot tall tree, you cut it back to whatever height you want the lowest rung of your fence to be, or, you know, wherever you're building. And then next season in the spring, it'll send out new stems wherever you cut it, and you train those individual stems usually onto a wall or onto like metal wire that you attach to posts, and you train those branches along the wire over the course of the year. And then by the end of the year, those branches are no longer like flexible and pliable, they become hard and woody, and then you don't need to attach them to the wire anymore. The wire is just for like keeping them in a spot for a certain number of months, and then you can remove it and the tree will kind of stay in that spot. But yeah, Susan put the word in the chat if you want to do some more research.
Yeah, someone was asking, can they cut their tree back now? It's growing new greenery. We had that warm spell around Christmas, so some things started growing. Is it still okay to go ahead and make cuts even when things have started to grow during like a short stint of warmth?
So I guess I'll bounce the question back to you. What is like the best time of year to prune trees?
Yeah, I think the best time to prune is once the deciduous trees lose their leaves, because you can see the branches more easily. You can see what needs to be done. So that's why I like to prune in winter. Also, when you prune in winter, you're going ahead and removing buds while the tree is dormant. So then when it starts to grow again, like starts to open up its buds in the springtime, it's not wasting time, I guess, opening up buds that you're going to remove later in the season. So you're allowing the tree to put its energy towards where you want it to grow if you go ahead and do the pruning in the wintertime. Now at Trees Atlanta, we can't get to all of our pruning in the wintertime, so we prune year round. And we know that certain trees need us to be a little bit more careful with them in the heat of the summer. So we just know by experience which trees need less pruning in the summertime, and we have to be a little more careful. But we recommend to everyone to do pruning in the winter if you can.
Yeah, so I mean, same thing with the espalier. If you're cutting back to a certain height, I would do that in the winter. And then in the spring, wherever you cut, that's 9 times out of 10 where the new stems are going to form. So you can then train those branches in the spring, and then throughout the whole summer. I would say like once a month, make an adjustment. You really don't have to do it more frequently than that. If you don't do it every month, there's the potential that new growth will start to turn hard, and it won't be as flexible or adaptable to where you want it to grow.
So now is a good time to prune. Someone was asking. Yeah. Until we really get close to spring, which is usually like mid-March here, is when things really start leafing out. We'll get flowers before then, but the leafing out. Yeah. So I think that answered most of their questions except the last one. Oh, They also asked, so can they do this on the south side of the yard? That seems like the best place to do it, right? Because you get the most sunshine year round.
Yeah, I think so.
And then any general advice on combining beauty with fruit trees in a landscape?
So I mentioned it earlier in regards to pollination, like you want to have perennial native flowers near your fruit trees. So, you could actually plant some of those perennial flowers like around your tree, like have the tree be in the middle of like a flower bed kind of. And that way, yeah, it's pretty, and you're establishing a ground cover there that doesn't need to be mowed or weed whacked, which is, actually better for the health of your tree to not have grass growing up right against the trunk. So yeah, that's probably what I would recommend, is add in some native perennial flowers.
All right. And our next question, we talked a little bit about transplanting trees already. And if you want to learn how to specifically transplant a tree, please come to a volunteer project if you can. We also have videos on our website about how to plant a tree. So the first part of this question was how to transplant trees. So that's my advice, is check out the resources on our website, which I can put the link in the chat in a second. But then the second part of the question is specifically about tangerine trees. So do tangerine trees do well in 8A, that far north?
I would.
Let's pause there with tangerine trees.
I would personally not want to plant them outside, unless you were like in zone 9. I think you could do it if you had a really sunny spot that maybe was against like a stone wall that could like radiate heat back onto the plant. But yeah, the shorter answer is no. Longer answer is maybe. If you want to, micromanage it, you might be able to.
Yeah. Okay, so best prep before transplanting a grafted fruit tree. Do you treat grafted trees any differently, Mike?
So the major difference for a grafted fruit tree and a grafted tree is just when you take 2 trees and you turn them into one. You cut them both pretty much in half and then attach them. And as long as
it's a miracle. It's amazing.
It's like a little Frankenstein monster. As long as they're the same genus, generally they are compatible. So you could put a plum onto a peach, but you probably can't put a plum onto an apple because they're different genus. So my major, I guess, prep for planting a grafted tree is there's going to be a point at the bottom of the tree where you can actually see a line that separates the 2 different varieties. And that line is going to sometimes have an open end that almost looks like a scab or a scar or like a little circle. And I usually want to turn that to face north. Yeah, so that attachment point where that scar is, it is sensitive to sunlight, to sun scald. So basically the tree gets sunburned there. So you want to turn that away from the sun. So you want to face it north.
Fascinating.
It really
Right.
is.
I never thought of that. I gotta try it.
That's the only thing I can think of in terms of a grafted tree.
I want to test that. Sounds cool. All right. The next question was, where can you find certified local growers? I'm not sure what certified means, the certification, but you did share some local growers.
Yeah, so I sent 4 links in the chat, and if you can't find it at any of those 4, then it probably doesn't grow very well here without a lot of effort. So yeah, I would definitely try out those plants first.
Okay. Then the next question was best time of year to prune fruit trees, which we briefly talked about. It's the same as other trees, right? Pruning in winter is best because then you're helping the tree preserve its energy in the spring. And how often to prune from the earliest stages of growth after planting a seedling? I generally just prune trees once a year in the winter, unless something happens to them, like they get damaged or they get a disease in part of the tree and you need to remove it. But I think generally once a year is enough assessment. You did mention with the espalier to do, you could possibly do a little more.
Yeah, I would say for most fruit trees, once a year is plenty, unless, like Susan said, if the tree is damaged and you need to, cut off an area where that wound is. But for the most part, once per winter is good enough.
So then follow-up question, somebody asked, when is the best time to prune peach trees? Any tips about pruning peach trees? So again, same timing, but what about tips on pruning peach trees? So they're stone fruit, right? Aren't you supposed to prune them like open?
Exactly, yeah. So
I need Mike to talk more about it though, because I don't know.
yeah, so
I know tidbits.
So there's what are the two types of growth habits, Susan?
X current and D current.
So what are those?
So there are very few X current trees here that we have in Georgia. We have like bald cypress and pond cypress, and what's the other one that looks like bald cypress? Dawn redwood. So all fruit trees here that we have are going to be D current, open grown, like wide, lots of branches.
So generally you'll see trees in the prunus genus, which is going to be peach, plum, nectarine, almonds, although we don't really grow almonds here, but those are all the same genus. And you'll often see them pruned like an open hand. And I'm going to see if I can find a good image and put it in the chat. The reason for that open hand structure is to increase airflow, sunlight penetration, and to make it a little easier to harvest. Because trees in the prunus genus tend to have more like fungal diseases. So you really want to maximize the sunlight and the airflow so that the fungus has a hard time growing. So that's like the main reason. And then easier access for harvesting is kind of like a secondary reason. So I personally don't recommend planting peach trees or nectarines in Georgia unless you're willing to spray for fungicides once or twice a year, which a lot of people, if they want to grow fruit at home, they don't want to have those chemicals on the food. Yeah, peach trees, although we are the peach state, they tend to have a lot of fungal issues here. So generally don't recommend them in Atlanta. Now there are some fungicides you can use that are less toxic, and I'll actually send some of those in the comment thread as well. But just know that it is pretty difficult. And if you're just starting to grow fruit trees, I would go with an easier tree like a fig. Figs are probably your lowest maintenance fruit trees.
Okay. Our last question is kind of long, but to summarize, what happened was they have several fruit trees and they all got diseased around the same time. And the trees defoliated. So I'm guessing this was during the growing season. And they think that what happened is they purchased some ornamental peach trees, and that the peach trees may have brought something with them, it sounds like. It sounds like they're blaming the peach trees. Because soon after they noticed Japanese beetles were attacking the peach trees, then they noticed the leaves on the apple tree started to die, then the branch, then the pears started to die. So have you ever experienced this, Mike? They're wondering like what happened and what do they do to address the problem? Can they treat them to keep them from completely dying? Will they come back? This sounds tricky.
It's maybe we'll have to follow up with
Okay,
with this particular question, because it sounds like there are some photos that were emailed talking about these issues that we don't have access to right now.
Okay.
But yeah, every fruit tree species tends to have different pests, diseases, funguses. So like a peach tree generally isn't going to be able to like give a disease to an apple tree. They just really don't have the same pests and fungus. So it's possible there was, you know, a little bit of a coincidence maybe that some of these things happened at the same time. But yeah, I think we'll just have to follow up with that person individually.
Sounds like a mystery, like a need a detective.
So
And the person can send us an email to maybe education@treesatlanta.org, and we can follow up with them.
and there was a good question posted about all the links that we put in the chat. Is there a way that we can send like the chat feed out to the participants?
Yeah, yes. So we're gonna send a follow-up email, and in there, we're gonna include these links, yes.
The recording has the chat in it, right? When you share
No,
it? No.
I mean,
okay, darn.
the recording that we internally can see, but
Oh,
not the one that will be posted into YouTube. Yeah,
so you'll just put the links in there. Got it.
yeah, I'll send them the links and the recording as well.
Thank you, Michelle.
Mhm.
All right, well, that was the last of our pre-submitted questions. Do we have any additional questions that you want to ask before we wrap up? If you do, you can raise your hand or put them in the chat.
Also,
And then,
I feel like
go
I
ahead.
was supposed to put some more stuff in the chat, but I don't remember what. I put the open hand for the peach. Was there any other questions I said I was gonna, or any other links I said I was gonna post?
I think you did all yours. I think I said I was going to do one. Oh, the link to our pruning resources. Let me put that in there too.
And I am gonna pitch one of our programs at Community Foodscapes. It's called, well, actually, yeah, one that's related to fruit trees is called Edible Neighborhood. And we basically are planting neighborhood scale orchards in people's yards that are accessible to the neighborhood, but also the excess fruit we harvest and distribute. So I'm going to send you all a link to that. You can either, if you're in one of the neighborhoods that we work in, you'll be able to sign up to get a fruit tree in your yard. Otherwise, there's also a link for volunteering. So if you want to come out and plant some fruit trees with us, you can do that as well. So I just put that link in there for you.
Thank you.
And I'll also share my screen. I'd like to announce some of our partners have shared these flyers with us. This is a fruit tree sale coming up. The online sales are now open, and they'll be open until February 11th. So you'll be ordering, and Mike, you mentioned that a few of these trees get sold out. So you'll be ordering online, and then you'll be picking up in person on the 19th, February 19th. And we also have a sale in April where we sell some fruit trees, a limited variety of native fruit trees. And that's going to be posted on our website soon as well. And here's another project that they wanted us to share with you from Foodwell Alliance.
Yeah, so when you buy fruit trees from this sale through a Foodwell Alliance, the funding that is raised from the sale goes directly to planting orchards in community gardens, parks, schools in Atlanta. So if you want to, buy a tree from them and also feel good about it because you're also helping plant another tree somewhere else, definitely recommend checking them out. And if you are in Atlanta on the day of the sale on the 19th, there will be 2 more fruit tree classes. One will be intro to fruit trees, which I will be teaching, and then there will be a fruit tree like advanced care class taught by someone else. So yeah, if you're in Atlanta and want to check out those sessions, you should be able to sign up on this website, fruittreesale.com.
And this also, it looks like the slide talks about that you can apply for a grant to have an orchard if you are like a community garden or school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's great.
Great. So I'll be sharing a follow-up email with those flyers and the links that we've shared. But thank you both of you, Mike and Susan, for bringing your knowledge to our community in this virtual setting. I hope everybody stays safe. And if there's any follow-up questions, feel free to email education@treesatlanta.org.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.